All right, welcome everybody to Tennis Channel Inside In. Now joining us, one of the premier voices in the game. She's written for Tennis Connected, CNN. Her publications, her analytical approach is second to none, and one of the best online followings there is. She hosts the 3 podcasts with Joel Drucker and Gil Gross. It's Amy Lundy back again on Tennis Channel Inside In. Amy, U.S. Open in the rear view. Nobody better to talk to. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's love chatting with you, Mitch.
Yeah, and we had to break in these new digs too, so I had to talk to somebody else here. We're getting to use the actual studio here today, so pretty pumped about that. But Amy, it was a wild time in tennis. It was exciting, and before we recap the championship matches, I wanted to ask you, what's your lasting memory of what we saw at the U.S. Open? There's a lot of different ways to go. It's an open-ended question, but as you look back at the 2024 edition, what's the first thing you think about?
The crowds, that the people there, it was just a mass of humanity, and they're getting close to the point where they might need to make some changes in terms of traffic and bottlenecks, but it's still just a great vibe, a great atmosphere, a very New York energy to it. So it's right on that edge of you could still go and have a really great time without being uncomfortable. But if they let any more people in, Mitch, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Everyone talks understandably about the qualifying event, how that's the best. It's a free ticket. Obviously, stuff's expensive there, but the access you get, the grandstands and the ground pass tickets and everything there, I don't know what capacity is, but we're finding out pretty soon.
Yeah, they're setting records. I mean, it's amazing. And the thing is that the prices are increasing. And there's some interesting things going on with resale, but they're going to have to look at that and fair pricing and all that. But you would think if the price of a grounds pass is increasing that much that fewer people would go. It's actually the opposite. They're getting more people to go. It's like more coveted.
Yeah, I thought that's a good answer to the question. The other side on the tennis side is that we're starting to see what a post Big Three era really looks like. And I know that could be hyperbole in a lot of different ways, but I'm one of the people like yourself that likes to wait a little bit before I make statements like that. It wasn't just one major. Now we've gotten to the end of 2024. None of the Big Three won Grand Slams. We've gotten to this point now where the dust is settling on what the new era looks like. It's pretty exciting, but it's also leading a lot of opportunities and a lot of questions. So that was the other area of it. We had Sinner and Alcaraz sweep the Grand Slams this year. So I'm looking at it from that perspective, Amy, that we really have our first kind of long-term view of what it's going to look like without these legends.
Yeah, and look, I host a podcast about the Big Three, and even I am really encouraged by it all and excited about what's about to happen and the transition and the new young rackets that are coming into the game, the new energy. I'm really excited about it, and we're lucky that we've got the emergence both on the men and the women's side of some really exciting players.
So let's talk about the men's champion, Amy. Jannik Sinner defeats American Taylor Fritz in straight sets in the final. He just plays brilliantly down the stretch to win the U.S. Open. His second major of the year, second hardcourt title. 55-5 is his record on the season. And if I have this right, 35-2 on hard courts this year. Clearly the best player on this surface by a considerable margin. He did what, speaking of the Big Three do, Amy, he saved his best for last. He rounded up. And I've always been impressed with his power and his game, and you've got the numbers to back that up. But his mind's really been shining, how he adjusted his return position, how he thinks out there. Just a remarkably competent and composed young man, and playing his best match when the chips are down is a truly special thing.
Yeah, and the serve has improved greatly, and it could improve even more still, which is almost a scary thing to think about. And there's other aspects of his game that could improve, including his net play. Although, when he did come in, he converted at a very high percentage. But the Big Three, if we learned anything from them, we learned that they were willing to adjust and tweak. And Nadal's serve was not great at the beginning. I mean, obviously it was great, but it wasn't like elite level. And look at how much he improved it. Same with Djokovic. Djokovic had a really big differential on the improvement. So when you think of the future for a player like Sinner, it becomes very exciting.
Yeah, it definitely does. And the serve is a good thing to analyze where he's at, where he's come in that game, in that department, how he just keeps adding little pieces to his game to get better. And it should be said too, I mean, handling the moment is part of it too. I don't know what the next phase of this Sinner saga is going to hold. Just looking at it for a moment, Amy, in isolation, there's a lot of outside noise. There's a lot of questions. You know, and I know that there are players that would not have been able to handle it, right or wrong, whatever the truth is, whatever's out there. Everyone has an opinion on it. But that would have, basically capitulated a lot of different players. Sinner was able to handle the noise, block it out, and just focus on tennis, where I think a lot of players, men and women, would not have been able to.
That is an incredible skill to have, both in a small setting to be able to just block things out, between points, but also in the larger picture, which, as you alluded to, he was able to do. And, he was interviewed about this, and to his credit, he answered all the questions that he was asked. And someone asked something like, well, what if this happens? Well, what if somebody says this or whatever? Talking about all the controversy swirling around him. And he said, I'm the type of person who forgets things pretty easily and just moves on to the next thing. I mean, what a great quality to have in a tennis player, right? Like, if you can forget what just happened and you can quickly move on to the next thing, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, in that match specifically too, with the final, given where Fritz was, the American, the crowd too, which we'll get to on the women's side, but that's another challenge of itself when you walk in knowing, okay, everyone's going to be essentially rooting against me. I'm going to get some cheers when I do things right, but the other player has the support. He blocks it out. He plays a great first set. You had that, and that's one of the reasons why I like following you on social media. First set stats out there, Fritz's stats, Fritz's serve return numbers. You're like, this isn't going to cut it. This is going to be a short day if this keeps going.
Right. I think one of the analysts said, I won't take credit for this, but I liked it. One of the analysts said that basically Fritz is maybe, in terms of his ground strokes and his aggressive baseline game, he's maybe not quite as good a version of Sinner. So, and the sets were close, but it was, tiny margins in tennis. It was a straight set victory. So I thought that was really good analysis. Sinner, cool as a cucumber. Nothing that's happening in the crowd seems to affect him. So he played, with the utmost discipline. And that was the difference in the match.
It really was. I don't want to take anything away from what Taylor Fritz accomplished getting to the final, first American in a major final since 2009, the U.S. Open since 2006. So a lot of accomplishments. He's back up into the top 10. And really, the semifinal match against Tiafoe, not to kind of dwell on what that meant for Francis and other areas, but I was just so impressed by his fitness, his maturity, and his mental stamina too. It takes a lot to win a war like that, especially against a fellow American in Arthur Ashe Stadium. But he is just so locked in physically, fitness-wise, and mentally that to get to this final, I know that's going to be a sour taste in his mouth, but he acknowledged as much, right, Amy, like he is going to appreciate and savor this because he worked so hard to get there.
It really was a difference of a few points before that last set. And I think the style of play that Francis plays, where he's such a good mover, his fitness was great to be able to reach that point, and then just a little bit more gas in the tank, and he's there, right? But all credit to Fritz. I mean, Fritz in that match was serving at such a high level, and that was not quite the same level that he brought to the final.
Yeah, it's I know the biggest thing too, Amy, is we hope that these Americans can keep it going. Francis has gotten to the semis before, took a little bit of a dip. Glad to see him back. Fritz is up to, I think, 7 now. I'd like to think we're getting closer to maybe ending that Grand Slam drought, but it also shows you too just how hard it is. You think you're close, and then you run into a generational future Hall of Fame talent.
Yes, and we definitely are getting there, and not just with Francis and Taylor, but Tommy Paul, Korda, Shelton. these are high quality players that are moving up the ladder of both the rankings and in terms of what they're doing with their tennis.
Yeah, they truly are. And it was interesting to also hear Francis say, like, in that moment and in those pressure moments, even he feels the nerves. It'll be kind of something that recreational players can understand. Like, yeah, everybody gets tight and nervous. It's not just you. But it was a special run by Taylor. He falls short to Jannik Sinner in straight sets. I guess the other question, Amy, on this is, what do you think this means going ahead for, I alluded to it at the top, the rivalry with Carlos? Each won 2 slams this year. Sinner on the hard courts, Carlos on grass and clay. What does this mean going forward? How excited are you going forward that these two young guys with still so much of their primes left are just sweeping up all the majors now?
It's thrilling. And what makes it even better is the 2 different styles of play right now and the differences. And I was happy to be looking at the head-to-head. I think Alcaraz has it 5-4 right now. And this may surprise you, but it's not on the different surfaces, it's not who you think would be leading the head-to-head. In other words, Sinner has Carlos 1-0 on grass. And, on clay, I think they're even on clay. So it's going to be a fun one going forward. And it'll be like a chess match. Like, Carlos really is an all-court player, and he will finish you off at the net when he's clicking on all cylinders. So Sinner's going to have to adjust to that. And Carlos got Sinner, beat him at Roland Garros this year on his way to the title in a great match. So seeing these 2, and they're both like good guys who love the game. So seeing these 2 go at it for the next decade plus, how great is this going to be? We're so lucky.
It's going to be great. I hope for Yannick's case, though, he doesn't run into him again at Indian Wells, because that just seems like where it's the most clicking for Carlos. But the last question on this, Amy, right now, I know there's still time to go, so we can say we'll see what happens. But whose year would you rather have right now? Whose year would you put at the top? Because it's close. We're talking apples to apples. But if we're crowning the best season on tour, which one of these 2 would get your vote?
I have to put aside recency bias when I think about this. So it's so easy to say Sinner because he just won the US Open, I know that Sinner has more titles. I think I would give the slight edge to Alcaraz because winning Roland Garros and Wimbledon back-to-back on the 2 different surfaces is so difficult to do, to make that adjustment. Then Carlos went back to clay and played the Olympics. Sinner did not play the Olympics. So I give Alcaraz tons of credit for doing that. Yes, he lost to Djokovic in the gold medal match, but he won silver. He admitted he was kind of burnt by the time he got to the US Open, but it's a very close call, and I give it to Alcaraz.
What's that, the channel double? Is that what it's called?
Oh, yeah. That's what we're calling it. Yeah.
I think I would give him the slight edge now, but subject to change. If Sinner does what he's done in the past and just start cleaning up the indoor hard courts, then we're going to reevaluate this and more than likely change our answers. But it was a remarkable run to the U.S. Open on the men's side here with Amy Lundy talking U.S. Open recap on Tennis Channel Inside In. On the women's front, Aryna Sabalenka gets it done. She wins her, also like Jannik Sinner, 2nd hard court major of the year. Amy, she withstood 2 tremendous challenges by Americans, Emma Navarro in the semis, Jessica Pegula in the final, wins each match in straight sets, 2 hard-fought straight set wins. She handled the moment. She handled the crowd. She handled the demons of Ghosts of U.S. Open past, and she just got it done. It was a remarkable championship-like effort from somebody that I will still say, all due respect to Iga, all due respect to all the talented women on the tour. Amy, when she plays her best, Aryna Sabalenka is the best, and she proved it yet again.
Score 1 for power tennis. That's the thing about the women's game. It's not as centered around the serve as the men's game is. So they hold serve at just a slightly lower percentage. it's starting to sort of coalesce around the return game. And the thing with Sabalenka, she has both a great serve and a great return. So she's looking to strike first, both with her serve and with her return. So that makes it very exciting. On the other side, the WTA Tour has many, many great movers and counterpunchers. So this is going to be super interesting going forward. How will players who are really good at moving and counterpunching get errors out of Sabalenka? Or is she just going to buzzsaw and power her way through everything?
Yeah, specifically that semifinal match, because Emma Navarro has impressed me as much as anyone. I thought she played great. And I don't know if that's a good sign, or if we should all be terrified that she put forth that effort and still didn't get a set off Sabalenka, because there was a book out on her, right? She'll get tight. There's going to be errors. There's going to be letdowns, and there's still moments. But her ability now to right the ship, how she's reined in some of that power, not too much. She still has her identity. So her team, her coaches did a great job. We're going to rein it in, but not too much. And the service issues are pretty much gone too. So it's just a poised champion. It's funny, I never thought I'd say Sabalenka and poise so synonymously. But after watching that was one of the first things that came to my mind.
She used to make so many errors on second serve returns, right? So you're returning and you get this slow roller that has much less pace than the first serve. And she used to just try to tee off on that thing. Yeah. She is putting I don't have the exact percentages, but I looked at this at one point. She is putting such a higher percentage, markedly higher percentage of second serves in the court. Sometimes it's deep. Sometimes she does rip it and go after it, but she's just cut down her errors on that particular aspect of the game.
I also saw a stat, and I'm pretty sure this is accurate. You can fact check me out there if it's wrong, but I think she only lost 2 sets in majors this year.
Wow, that could be.
She didn't play Wimbledon, and Andreeva at Roland Garros. I think she's won every other set of a major.
I think I heard something like that too. Not playing Wimbledon. I wish she had played Wimbledon. I know she needed the break, and she's explained that. It'll be great to see her play Wimbledon next year, because I think her game just suits that surface so well.
It's not going to be the last major. I think that's safe to say, right? Like, there's more championships for this player. It's still another young. We talk about older, like a young, like 26. There's still a lot left in what she's going to accomplish. Really happy to see it didn't end well, but Jessie Pegula's run to the final, getting the breakthrough, beating Iga comfortably, then the rally against Muhova, where it was a couple points away from being catastrophic, and she battles back. She was 15-2, Amy, on summer hard courts, losing to Sabalenka in finals both times. Couldn't have really gone much better than that. And I think for Pegula at her age, at 30 and still going forward, it was great to see her back in the mix up to number 3, proving that she can be at the very top of this sport and still has room to improve.
The mental toughness that she showed when she got down in that Muhova match, that's the type of match that a lot of times you'll see a player just quit and say, it wasn't my night. But she used the energy of the crowd. She used her flat ground strokes, which are nightmarish for most people, especially for a very creative player like Muhova. And she's very consistent. That girl does not make a ton of errors. So she really had to problem solve and get through that, a signature victory of this year for her.
Every time I watch Jessie play, especially now studying it up a little more, I'm just in awe of how deep she hits the ball. How she just continually, it's like basically just like getting pinned back. If you're a football fan out there, it's like a deep punt in your end zone where you just can't have any room to operate, or at the 1 or 5 yard line. I watch her play and I think about how frustrating that must be. And it takes a Herculean effort like Sabalenka to hit through that and kind of get comfortable. So I'm not selling my stock. She has a great team. She has the perfect mindset. She handles losses too, which is another great quality in this sport, Amy. Pegula handles losses as well as anyone.
Yeah, her family is around professional sports, and she understands. She's watched it probably her entire life. You make a great point about the depth on her shot, but it's not like a heavy top spin that you can stand way back and then put some margin on it and get it back. It's a ball that has a trajectory that skids. So if your timing isn't absolutely perfect, you're either going to cough up a short ball or you're going to make an error. So that type of ball is like a nightmare.
Yeah, not fun. I think that would be if we polled players, they'd say not fun to play against Jessie, as nice as she is.
Right.
Well, that said for Sabalenka, we talked about on the men's game, but the rivalry with Iga and that head-to-head's a little more straightforward. Clay, Iga as the hammer on everyone in the world. But on hard court, Sabalenka has proven that she can be the best in the world, is the best in the world in a lot of ways. So what do you foresee for this rivalry? It wasn't a great showing for Iga with her high standards at the U.S. Open, how she adjusts her game outside of clay. How do you see this Sabalenka-Iga rivalry budding as the years follow?
Well, Iga is a U.S. Open champion, so she's capable of winning there. I think she's going to have to continue to evolve her serve. And
what do you think that's like the serve is the big topic for Iga, right? Because she's clearly working on it. There's something that we can all see that isn't clicking. She's trying stuff, but it has not held up. I think it's safe to say in these big matches and these big runs. What do you think the biggest issue has been with that? And how can she improve it? Because this season is 10 months long and there's not really a time to stop and work on it.
I'm not much of a technician. I have heard that there's something with her toss or that maybe she drops the hand or the head or, I'm the last person to ask on technique. But there are any number of changes that can be made. I mean, these are elite level athletes. It would be a lot easier for them to make a change than it would be for you or I. So they can do it. It's just, it's a mentality. There's a stubbornness maybe, but that stubbornness got them to where they are. Yeah. So, and it's the same thing is kind of going on with Coco Gauff right now. So how willing are they to, make these changes and make them in a very small amount of time? They can do it. They can. Mm-hmm. So we'll see.
Right. You have this muscle memory. You have these skills that got you there. We know they're working hard in practice. It's also like we hear in another sport reference again, but a basketball player who's not good at free throws in games practices a lot, can make it in practice. But when things go, haywire in a match or in a game, they revert to their old tactics. So we'll see. I thought it was a great, obviously, U.S. Open, Amy. We saw two great finals, two great champions. The only thing that maybe wasn't great about the final weekend was all the throw up in the Jack Draper match.
Not to get gross, but I mean, it wasn't even that bad. It was more like a baby would spit up, It was like
the towel. And I appreciate the effort. I think, if he can get his body right, the game's there. I think he's going to be a top 10 player for a while. He's got the skill. I appreciate that he wanted to fight through it. He's working on staying healthier and staying fitter. But maybe putting the towel back in the bin after throwing up and cleaning it up was a little, I know it was a volunteer job, but I do hope the ball kids and everyone got a little compensation for that, because that's like time and a half.
Oh yeah. It reminds me of my son who's, 14 years old. Like some of the stuff they do when they come in from practice or whatever, it's just kind of gross. But yes, ball kids deserve all the credit for that. And yes, Draper, as a lefty and a very fit up-and-coming player, is going to be one to watch.
What on that topic, having a 14-year-old son, in that next generation, I don't know if he's still Gen Z or if that's the generation after, but what does he think about the oversized shirt? And is that a thing that we got to get used to?
Oh, I asked him a lot about tennis in general. He's just, my son is like not into fashion, so I doubt he'd even have an opinion on that, but he's a big sports fan. Mm-hmm. So the thing that he is always saying is, why do they make everybody be so quiet all the time? So there might be something to this, letting fans talk or move a little bit more. We'll see. They do it in next gen. We'll see if this becomes a change.
All right. Well, no, I'm going to monitor that. I'm trying to keep up with the trends. So any way we can pick the brains of the youth is good. Before we wrap this up, just want to talk about where we're going forward. Got the new top 10s out. I just wanted your perspective on certain things. So the women's game right now, it's Iga, Sabalenka, Pegula up to number 3. Rybakina, who unfortunately had to pull out, was number 4. 5 is Jasmine Paolini, Coco 6, Qinwen Zhang at 7. Then it's Emma Navarro, Barbora Krejcikova, and Maria Sakkari rounding out the top 10. So what, if anything, stands out about the women's top 10 post-US Open?
I mean, Sakkari, actually, that she's still in the top 10, that's somebody who's really struggled. But another thing that stands out is just in the post-Serena era, we're starting to get a few players that are stockpiling slams like Krejcikova and Sabalenka. So I like that. I like that. You know, even in best of 3 at the slams, we're starting to get stars that are being minted. The women's game is well positioned, and I'm really interested and excited about the reporting that John Wertheim has been doing about a potential merger or acquisition. This could be really good for the sport because tennis is unique that we have the 2 genders playing side by side around the world. There's no other sport like that where they're playing at this level. So you can compare and contrast, and you can have this interplay. And sometimes you even have them playing together in mixed doubles. We're very lucky, and tennis is great in that way.
Certainly is. That top 10 has a lot of familiar names, the jockeying, the positioning. And again, it's also cool to see Jasmine Paolini, top 5 player at this point, is just, it's incredible to see. On the men's side, the new top 10 adjusted after the US Open. Jannik Sinner, number 1. Alex Zverev up to 2. Carlos Alcaraz, Novak Djokovic down to 4. Then it's Medvedev, Rublev, Fritz at 7. Yubi Hurkacz 8. Casper Ruud 9, and Grigor Dimitrov. So interesting movements. Djokovic out of the top 3, Zverev up to number 2, and the American and Fritz number 7. So reacting to that, Amy, anything stand out in the men's top 10?
I don't, and I say this in the nicest possible way, I don't care what Djokovic is ranked really for the rest of his life. He's good now. You know, he's done everything he set out to do and more. So he can be ranked whatever, and his ranking can bottom out and he can still get wild cards. I'm just going to enjoy him playing for the rest of his career. It's an interesting mix of young and old, with Dimitrov still being in the, not old, but you know.
Yeah, I got it.
Dimitrov still being in the top 10, and different mix of styles, which I really like. So a good top 10, actually.
What do you think, Amy, about, we're at the Davis Cup now. Carlos is on the court. He's playing right now, actually. When we started this, he lost the first set to Thomas Mahach. He's playing. Novak Djokovic is playing. I get it. I get that we hear that the season is long. I also understand how much it means to these players to play for their country. So what do you think about, the hamster wheel keeps spinning. These players are back playing at the Davis Cup.
Shaking my head, SMH emoji with hand on head. I don't begrudge them the Davis Cup for sure, but anything after that, Carlos is slated to play a bunch of exhibitions. They're going to play in the Middle East in the Six Kings thing, but also he's playing in Charlotte, North Carolina. I mean, like all this other stuff that he's doing. And, oh, by the way, there's still some Masters 1000s. There's the Asia Swing. There's the Paris Indoors. So if he's burnt, which he said he was, I think he's got to be careful. He hasn't won the Australian Open. That's the one he hasn't won. So, Alcaraz, please give yourself a fair shot.
You said it perfectly. It's hard to look at it fairly when you say you're burnt. And I get it. The money is nice to play some exhibitions, but you kind of add that to your plate as you see fit. But look, for Djokovic too, especially, like what his next, I'm with you, what the next iteration of his career, now that he's accomplished everything, he's at peace, but he is still a competitor, how this progression goes forward. Because what we learned in the Olympics, what you learn covering him every day, is that when he's locked in, when he gets you in a big match, there's still some old tricks that old dog has, and he can still find a way to grind out victories.
To all the fans out there, I would just say, please don't become obsessed with when he's going to retire, how it's going to happen, what that moment will be. Just enjoy being able to see the greatest tennis player that has ever picked up a racket and savor every moment.
Sounds like that could be applied to Rafael Nadal. Is that fair to say also?
He hasn't officially retired yet, and I think we should all just give up on asking him when he's going to. It will happen when he's ready.
I couldn't agree with that more. We got the Laver Cup coming up. No official announcements. Just appreciate these legends. Amy Lundy, this was a blast. Anything to expect going forward? What to expect maybe in the tennis season. Guadalajara is taking place a 500 women's event. Then we got indoor season, Asian swing, Paris, ATP finals, WTA finals in Saudi Arabia. What should we expect on the tennis tours?
I think this is the time of year where players who need to jostle for positioning will make their moves, or, maybe take some time off and work on some of those technical things that we discussed. But since you kind of open-ended that to me, Mitch, I'm going to say there's one thing that I wanted to get in. I got the IBM tournament totals emailed to me this morning, and I didn't have a ton of time to look at them. But I got 2024 for US Open and 2023 emailed to me. And one thing really stood out, a big difference between last year and this year. Double faults are significantly up on both sides, but really on the men's side. Aces are up slightly too. What's the reason? I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see. I don't think there was a difference in ball. So are we seeing a shift in how players approach the game, especially from the men's side? And are they going for more on that serve because they know that majority of points are played between 0 and 4? I don't know. Let's watch the trends.
Yeah, I am not the person to answer that. My instant theory would be, maybe they're seeing something that a weak second serve puts you at such a disadvantage that the analytics are saying you're better off just going for it on the off chance you hit a double fault.
I like
because
it. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, no, Amy, this is always fun. Appreciate talking tennis with you, especially after a major championship. We know that tennis has got a lot of chaos and drama, and it can be imperfect at times. But when it's going, when there's a big tournament, big event, big match, we know that there's nothing better. So I appreciate you coming on the show and talking tennis here on Tennis Channel Inside In.
Tennis is the best. The healthiest sport in the world, just the best. And I always enjoy coming on. So thank you.
The healthiest sport in the world, even if players are throwing up and giving it their all. But Amy Lundy, Tennis Channel Inside In, thank you for coming on.